Welcome to Make Art, a hands-on course for engineering design, a course taught at the University of South Florida. In this video, we're going to look at input history and component mode. Let's create poly primitive. Again, I have interactive creation turned off. Under poly primitives, I'm going to create a cube. Now that I've created this cube, we can zoom in. And one thing I would like you to notice here is that in our channel box, we have all of the attributes that deal with position, rotate, and scale. And then below that, we have our shape, which is just this shape node that Maya creates automatically. And then we have our input modes. The input mode for the current cube is its current history, meaning when we created the cube, what were the settings when we created the cube. By default, the settings of the cube give it the width, height, and depth of 1 unit, or 1 centimeter in this case. And its divisions, its subdivisions, are divided into 1. So you have 1 square per side of the cube. If we go into subdivisions width and we select it and come into our viewport and middle mouse button drag left or right, you can see that we're dividing that along the width 2 divisions. We can also type in how many divisions we want added, or again, you can just click and drag left to right to add more. So you just click on the word and drag left to right. So this input will allow us to apply more divisions to it. We just have to be careful that as we model and change things within this mesh, if we go back to this input and try to change it, it will affect the changes we made previously. So even though it will keep this history, you can't always go back and change it. We'll look into that in more detail later. So let me put this back to its default of 1, and we'll take a look at the polygon components. Polygons are made up of different components. If we have our cube selected and we right-click on top of it, we can see the components that make up the cube. We have vertices, faces, and edges. We can also see that we're in object mode right now, so if we click on object mode, that just tells us we're on object mode. The UVs deal with adding texture or color to our mesh. Multi means that you're selecting multiple components, meaning faces and edges, or faces and vertices and edges. And face vertex just shows you where the vertices and faces meet. So if you have really complex geometry, it might be hard to kind of see where those meet up, and this is just a way of seeing where they meet up. The components, however, are edges, faces, and vertices. So again, we just right click. So I'm holding my right mouse button down as I do this. And if I come over to vertices, we see a couple of things happening. The first thing that we'll notice is that our cube will turn to a blue and purple color. So the blue and purple color indicate that you are in component mode, because now you can select the components. So for instance, the components of a polygon are vertices, or points, which appear in the corner, or corners. We have edges that connect our vertices, and we have faces. The faces are the planes that connect all of the vertices and edges together. Typically, a polygon will be a triangle. However, it is a good rule of thumb to model in quads, or squares and rectangles. Right-click over our object, and we can see edges, vertices, vertex faces, faces, multi, UVs, and then back to object mode. So for instance, if I right-click and go to edge, I'll be able to select the edges of my object. And with the edge selected, I can hit W, and I can move that edge. I can hit R and scale, E and rotate the edge, although since this is just one edge, you got to be careful on what axes you're rotating. I can right-click again and select vertice. So with the vertex selected, I can move that vertice around. If I hold my Shift key, I can select multiple vertices to move around and manipulate. Or I can right-click and select face. With the face selected, again, I can rotate. I can hit R to scale, W to move. We can also hold the shift key if we want to do multiple selections. Like so. Another thing we can do is we can hit F8 on your keyboard. You'll go in and out from object to component mode. You can also see up in the top, the icons here in the status line will let you go from object to component mode as well. So it's very simple to jump in from object to component mode. One thing to keep in mind is that when you're modeling, you'll be adding more and more edges by cutting edge loops into your object, and in which case when you do that, it'll add more vertices where those edges meet. So you want to be really mindful of the edge flow, meaning which direction these edges go around, because when we cut, we want to make sure we're cutting in such a way that it'll make modeling easier. We can also jump in and out of our views to make sure that when we are moving vertices and edges, that we're moving them together or we're moving them just in one axis. So sometimes you'll want to click and drag like this, and just know that when you're doing that, you're still selecting all the way through, so you're selecting all the way to the bottom, even though we're looking at the top view and we're clicking and dragging. So you can see I'm selecting the whole entire object. If we did it from the top like this, we would be selecting just the top vertices in this case. This is a quick introduction to component mode and which components make up a polygon mesh.